Hello everyone. So today I'm going to talk about my lesson, A Day of the Dead. Okay, let's start.
Okay, let's begin. Okay, here we go. I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead.
Oh,
First. Did I arrive in Guatemala?
Yes.
Yes.
I arrived Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st.
Where did I arrive?
Guatemala. I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st.
I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st. Who arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead?
I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st.
I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st. Did I arrive in Guatemala on November 3rd?
No, I wasn't
I didn't arrive
in Guatemala on November 3rd. I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st.
What day did I arrive in Guatemala?
The Day of the Dead,
First, I arrived
November
in
1st.
Guatemala.
I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead,
First.
November 1st.
Where did I arrive on November 1st?
Guatemala. I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the
I arrived in
Dead,
Guatemala
November 1st.
on November 1st. I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st.
Oh,
I was curious about this holiday.
Oh,
So I went to the cemetery to see what was happening. Was I angry about this holiday?
No, I wasn't angry about this
Wasn't
holiday.
angry about this holiday. Was I sad about this holiday?
No, I wasn't sad about this
Sad
holiday.
about this holiday.
I was curious about this holiday.
this holiday. Who was curious about this holiday?
I was curious
Agent,
about this
I
holiday.
was curious about this holiday. What was I curious about? The holiday.
The holiday, I was curious about this holiday.
Which holiday was I curious about?
The Day of the Dead. I was curious about this holiday. I was curious about the Day of the Dead.
I was curious about the Day of the
The
Dead.
Dead.
Was I curious about the Day of the Dead? Or was I curious about Christmas?
I was curious about the Day of the Dead, of
Day
course.
of the Dead, of course. I was curious about the Day of the Dead, so I went to the cemetery to see what was happening.
Oh,
Where did I go?
cemetery. I went to cemetery to see what was happening.
Cemetery. Did I go to the cemetery or did I go to the airport?
Yes, I was.
Yeah,
I went
to
to cemetery to see what was happening.
Went to the cemetery. Well, me, right, AJ. I went to the cemetery. Where did I go?
Cemetery.
To the cemetery, right.
I went to
the
cemetery.
cemetery. When did I go to the cemetery?
November 1st. I went to
November
cemetery
The
on the Day of the Dead, November
I
1st.
went to the cemetery on the Day of the Dead, November 1st. Why did I go to the cemetery?
To see what was happening.
Well,
I went to
what was
cemetery
happening.
to see what was
I went
happening.
to the cemetery to see what was happening. Who went to the cemetery to see what was happening?
I went to see cemetery
Me,
to
AJ,
to see
went to the
what
cemetery
happening.
to see what was happening. Where was the cemetery?
Guatemala. The cemetery was in
Guatemala.
the Guatemala.
Cemetery was in Guatemala.
The cemetery was in cemetery.
What is the Day of the Dead? A holiday.
A holiday.
Day of the
A
Dead
holiday is
a holiday.
what is a day of the
When
dead.
is the Day of the Dead?
November 1st.
The day of
The day
dead.
of the dead is holiday
Was
on
and
the
is
day November 1st.
November 1st. So I went to the cemetery on the Day of the Dead
Oh,
to see what was happening. What I found was quite interesting.
Oh,
Was it boring?
No, it
No,
wasn't boring.
wasn't
It was interesting.
Was it interesting?
Yes, it was interesting.
It was interesting. The cemetery was
The
interesting.
cemetery was interesting.
How did I feel
I
about the
felt
cemetery?
it was interesting.
I felt it was interesting. Or I thought it was interesting. Was it boring or was it interesting?
It was interesting, of course.
It was interesting. Of course, it was interesting.
It was interesting.
What was interesting? The cemetery.
Cemetery.
The cemetery
Because
was
cemetery was interesting.
When was the cemetery interesting?
On the day of the dead,
Was
November
interesting.
1st. The cemetery
the day of
was
the dead.
interesting on the day of the dead,
First.
November 1st.
Okay, the atmosphere in the cemetery was like a party.
Oh,
Was the atmosphere
So
Welcome
that's
to
all
Story
about my sharing.
for
That's
Day
all.
of the Dead?
So that's all by my sharing about this topic. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.